The town of Redhausen always felt like a forgotten corner of Germany, a place where time itself moved at a slower pace. You know the kind of place I'm talking about: cobblestone streets, steep gabled roofs, and a quiet canal winding its way through the center. People here lived simple, predictable lives. They knew each other's names, their routines, their small joys and sorrows. It was a town wrapped in a comfortable blanket of innocence, where the idea of real danger was just a story you heard about other, bigger cities. But that all shattered on a cold, crisp October evening. The first hint that something was wrong came from Dorothea Hallberg, a retired schoolteacher. She was in her garden, collecting her laundry as the evening chill set in, when she heard the distant whine of sirens. At first, she dismissed it. Maybe an ambulance for old Mr. Bruckner, who'd been unwell. But the sound grew louder, sharper, echoing off the narrow streets. These weren't ambulance sirens. They were police. And the sound wasn't routine. It was urgent, desperate. A cry for help, tearing through the town's tranquility. The sirens were racing towards Haus Silberkron, the old, imposing villa that stood alone on a bend in the canal. It was a place shrouded in mystery, hidden behind tall poplar trees and even taller rumors. Dorothea felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She dropped her laundry basket, the clean sheet spilling onto the damp ground. All across Redhausen, a silent alarm went off. Curtains twitched. Lights flickered on. People stepped out of their warm homes into the cold night air, their faces etched with a mix of curiosity and fear. They were all drawn by that invisible thread of sound, pulled towards the unfolding drama. For decades, the most exciting thing to happen in Redhausen was the annual summer fair. Now, police cars were screeching to a stop outside a house most people had only ever whispered about. When the first officer cautiously pushed open the heavy oak door of Haus Silberkron, a strange smell wafted out. It was a bizarre mix of stale, cold coffee and something else. Something sharp, metallic, the unmistakable scent of gunpowder. An unnatural stillness hung in the air, a silence that felt heavy and wrong. This was not the peaceful quiet of an empty home. Inside, in the grand drawing room, the scene was grim. Heinrich Wolff, a retired judge, known for his severe face and even sterner courtroom reputation, was slumped in his favorite armchair. His crisp white shirt was stained with a dark, spreading patch over his chest. A small, elegant pistol lay on the Persian rug at his feet. The expression frozen on his face was a haunting mix of shock and utter despair, a look that would forever be seared into the memory of every officer who saw it that night. But he wasn't alone. On the floor beside him lay the body of Elsa Meyer, his loyal housekeeper for nearly 30 years. She was positioned awkwardly, her head resting against the leg of a polished mahogany table. One of her hands was stretched out, as if she'd been reaching for something that had just slipped from her grasp. The initial sweep of the house only deepened the mystery. There were no signs of a break-in, no smashed windows, no forced locks. The scene didn't suggest a violent struggle, except for one small detail, a faint, almost invisible scratch across Elsa's wrist. But 2 people were dead. The officers exchanged uneasy glances, the unspoken questions hanging in the stale air. Even before the forensics team arrived, the whispers started. It had to be someone they knew. They must have let them in. This wasn't a robbery. By the time the 2 bodies were carefully carried out under sterile gray sheets, the news had already spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community, and in the absence of facts, the town of Redhausen, desperate for an explanation, had already made up its mind. They had already chosen their culprit. But in a town where everyone thought they knew everyone else, the truth was buried far deeper than anyone could have imagined. What really happened inside Haus Silberkron that night, and who was truly responsible for shattering the peace of this quiet little town. The investigation had only just begun, but the real story was about to unravel. Thanks for watching. If you're intrigued by this mystery, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next part of the story.